Hello everyone and welcome back to the video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Tera, which is Europe's first super major of the year, and you have a bunch of invaders coming down. So this event should be super interesting. For our top 16 seeds, you're going to have Space, Lugi, Tarek, and Rathlow in 13th, Cosmos, Takara, Bloom Forever, and Andres at Fend in 9th. In 7th, you're going to have Siski and Jogabu. 5th place, Zomba and Gluttony. 4th place, Yoshidora. 3rd place, Light. 2nd place, Tweek. And seeded to win the entire thing is, of course, Spargo. So the main draw of this event is definitely going to be us finally seeing European talent fighting against some of these invaders. There's a lot of amazing European players that just can't travel outside of regions, so this is an amazing opportunity. That's going to be the main focus of the video. For our first little chunk of the bracket, our invaders are going to be Spargo, Takara, and Base Mage. You actually have Takara and Base Mage fighting up against each other, and I would favor Takara to take this matchup, but Jigglypuff is definitely a character that can exploit chem off stage, and Base Mage has been looking very impressive as of late, but I would still favor Takara to take that one. Now, for Spargo's bracket, this is pretty interesting because he might be going up against two Greninja players. You're going to have Raikkoa, who is likely going to play Sora, but he does have a Greninja secondary. It's been a lot more Sora of late, but I can't imagine that he's completely abandoned the character, and it's not out of the question for him to try it versus Spargo because Greninja actually does very well versus Cloud. Like, there's a region that there's no really super top Cloud players in Europe. I mean, there's no real super top Cloud players anywhere aside from Spargo. There's some good ones, but there's none within that top 50 area aside from Spargo, of course. But I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. I honestly wouldn't be super shocked if we saw Spargo bring out the Aegis versus Tarek and Raikkoa, and then you're going to have Siski versus Takara. Now, this is also an interesting one because Siski has a lot of reps versus Andres Event, and a majority of them are going to be going in his favor. But also, when Andres Event is playing versus Siski, it's pretty much Ryu, Ken, or not Ken, Ryu and Terry. Those are pretty much the two characters that he's using. You're not seeing a lot of Ken, you're seeing a little bit of Kazuya, but again, that doesn't really matter because Takara is solo Ken. So I'm very interested to see how that's going to go. I'm still going to favor Siski, especially considering that Takara doesn't have an amazing record versus the Japanese Samuses either. But you're likely going to get in the winners quarterfinals if Spargo manages to get through the Greninja Gauntlet, him versus Siski. We get a rematch of Delfino Mazza, which is going to be extremely exciting. That set was incredibly close. I'm not going to lie, Siski super choked it on 2 separate games, so if we see this run back of Spargo Siski, it could go to Siski's favor. Also, I just forgot to mention, but N4E is also going to go against Siski, and that's definitely an upset I could see happening. They've never played offline, but I think Sephiroth actually does well enough versus Samus where I could see that upset happening. But also, N4E is a player that doesn't really care about matches because he just wins anyway. Like, he is absolutely someone that could mess up this bracket by getting a couple upsets, so keep your eye out on him. For our next chunk of the bracket, the invaders are going to be Yoshidora and Cosmos. And Cosmos, at Patchwork, he lost to Lucky the Piranha Plant. At Gommel, he lost to Yoda Cage the Bowser Jr. At Tera, is he going to lose to Nasakino the Zelda? I'm not saying it's 100% going to happen, but it's definitely a possibility that we can't rule out. He has been struggling against these low-tier characters that are a little bit more unorthodox in the bracket, and we're going to have to see if he's able to overcome that. I would still expect Cosmos to win that, and it's a little bit weird just to see how Cosmos is doing right now because he is doing a character switch. I feel like a lot of people aren't giving him enough credit right now. He's switching from pretty much all ages for the past like 2 or 3 years back to Inkling and picking up Corrin as that secondary character. It's not like he's completely dropped Inkling, never played Inkling since the start of the game. He's never touched Corrin. These are characters that he's familiar with on some level, but it's definitely different adjusting to it in tournament and switching fully off your main of the past 2 years. So I'm going to give Cosmos a little bit of the benefit of the doubt that he will bounce back, because I do believe that Cosmos will bounce back. I think he's a very strong player, and I do believe that he can go far in this bracket. The first opponent that he's supposed to lose against is going to be Gluttony, which is honestly a pretty tough draw, and I wouldn't expect him to win that one. I do think that Corrin actually does well enough versus Wario where it's not impossible, but you would definitely favor Gluttony there. Even Mr. R, I think, has a decent shot of upsetting Cosmos. I wouldn't even know which character he would play between Inkling or Corrin. Again, nothing is impossible for Cosmos. I genuinely have a lot of faith in this player because he's had some insane highs that I think he can repeat, but it is going to be an adjustment period, and I don't know if Tera is going to be the event where he necessarily pops off. But a player I think I'm pretty confident will pop off on is going to be Yoshidora. I mean, there's obviously no top Yoshi in Europe, at least on the level of Yoshidora, because there's no Yoshi in the entire world that is on the level of Yoshidora, except maybe Mei, but that's a topic for a different time. His first opponent is going to be up against Lancelot, and he's probably going to be ready for the Chrom and Roy match. I mean, you look at Japan, you have Lax, who is the best Chrom player in the world right now, at least in my opinion. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that Yoshidora has a lot of reps versus him, but I would definitely expect the matchup in familiarity to be on Yoshidora's side, and I would expect him to take that set because he's also a top 10 player in the world. Rathlow, another tricky one. You do have experience versus Palutena and Samus, of course, so he is going to be aware of those matchups, and I would still favor Yoshidora, but Rathlow, very, very scary player, definitely someone that you got to look out for. And if Yoshidora were to get upset at any point, honestly, I would guess it is versus Raplo. And then you have Yoshidora versus Gluten. Now, I am very excited for the set and pretty much have no idea how it's going to go. You have two top 10 players facing off in fairly unorthodox characters. It's not like there's no warriors in Japan. You have Huto, for example, who's a very good one, but definitely not a super common character in Japan, especially when you contrast how popular he used to be. So I think this is going to be an extremely interesting set, and I am going to say that the matchup unfamiliarity is going to go into Yoshidora's favor, and he is going to take it because Gluten is a player, the more times you play him, the harder he is to beat, especially with the bike tech that he is incorporating, where he just gets so much more stage control. I think Yoshi's going to be an awkward character to do that too, so I will say that Yoshidora pulls it out for their first encounter. For the next bit of the bracket, our invaders are going to be Tweek, Icon technically, and Jogabu. Now for Tweek, he is going to be going up against Maze Beans, which is very interesting to me. Obviously, Tweek doesn't have a great record versus the top two Steves. He's never beaten an owner, or I believe his name is Pocket now before, but also they've only played once at Crown, and he's never taken a set of Akko. They've actually played multiple times, but also those two guys are like miles ahead of all the other Steve players, and it's not really close in my opinion. No offense to the other Steve players, but those guys are just really, really good. And Tweek does have the Sephiroth. I think he should win it, but even recently he dropped a set to Syrup, but then he won the run back set. It's just very tough to say. All I'm painting the picture of is that Tweek has lost to Steve in the past, but I would still favor him in this matchup because he has the Sephiroth, who I think does well enough versus Steve, and also he's a top 10 player in the world. Then you're going to have Tweek versus either Space or Icon. Now, this is a very interesting one because I have no idea who's going to be between Space and Icon. Icon doesn't really seem to care about bad matches in Europe. He just says, okay, I'm Icon in Europe, I'm going to win anyway, and that's what he has been doing for these past couple of events. He hasn't played up against Space, though, so maybe Space is immune to the Icon Europe curse, but honestly, depending on who wins this set, I don't really think it matters because I expect Tweek to beat both of those players. I just think Diddy Kong does well enough in basically all of those matchups where Tweek should pull through. Sorry, my mic cut out there, but our other invader is going to be Jogabu, and I am going to say that Super Sammy does manage to get that upset. Now, don't get me wrong, I think very highly of Jogabu as a player. I mean, he is by far the best Captain Falcon. Well, maybe not by far the best Falcon because Andrik exists, and he is still very, very good and just kind of unproven, doesn't really have a ton of results. But if Andrik went to more stuff, maybe he'd be the best, but he doesn't, so Jogabu, definitely the best Captain Falcon in the world right now. But even with that, I think Super Sammy has contention to be the best young Link in the world. Again, it's a little bit tough to say who the best young Link in the world is because there's like 30 of them in contention for that title, and Super Sammy is one of the less proven young Links because Europe is just a less proven region. But even with all of that mumbo jumbo, I think on paper, Super Sammy is favored in this matchup, and if he is able to get the upset over Jogabu, I think he's also going to be able to beat either Andris FN or Mazai. Now, neither of those matchups are going to be super swingy in either person's favor. I just think Super Sammy is probably going to carry his momentum from the Jogabu win into beating either of those players, and then he would go versus Tweek. Now, this very interesting to me because Tweek is probably going to start off with Sephiroth. He has lost to Young Link in the past, most notably. He lost to Toast at CEO, which was like a very long time ago, so I don't even know if it matters, but he has lost to Young Link in the past, which is something to note. I don't imagine he's going to start out on Diddy Kong because I think Diddy Kong actually struggles. Not an insane amount versus Young Link, but I definitely think it is one of the losing matchups for that character. So the Tweek Sephiroth, I think, is going to have to put in a lot of work in this bracket if he wants to get top 8 through the winner's side. And I do think that he is going to get top 8 through the winner's side, but the Sephiroth is definitely going to have to do some heavy lifting. And our final chunk of the bracket is also going to be the most dramatic one, with Light and Zomba being our invaders, which means we're going to get a little rematch of Shine Grand Finals, one of the best Grand Finals I've seen in a very long time. And you know that Zomba is eager for his revenge. It's kind of crazy that it's happening already with outside the top 8, but unfortunately, these guys aren't going to be playing each other because it's going to be Luigi versus Bloom Forever. For Light Luigi, I think out of all the players in the world, except for like maybe someone in the top 5, Luigi is the worst draw that Light could have got. I mean, it's a -2 matchup. Luigi absolutely destroys Fox, and Light in the past has struggled in this matchup because, you know, it's a -2. Now, to Light's credit, if anyone's going to win a -2, it's going to be Light. I mean, that's literally his career. He makes a living off of winning -2s, and he's beaten the best Luigis in the world previously. His last encounter versus Elegant did go into his favor, but I would still favor Luigi. I mean, it's a -2. That's really all I can say. They're just a very, very tough match for Fox. Maybe Luigi isn't used to Light's playstyle. Light's probably going to be the quickest player he's ever played against because Light is one of the quickest players in the entire world. So maybe he gets overwhelmed, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he's able to close out on that set. And then you have Zomba versus Bloom Forever. You look at Smash Factor, Zomba dropped a set there to mar the best Bayonetta in Mexico, and Bloom Forever is the best Bayonetta player in the world. So I would definitely expect him to be able to get that upset over Zomba. I just, again, think it's a very tough match for Rob. And honestly, the only way I could see Light versus Zomba happening in this winner's quarter set right here is if Bloom Forever and Luigi get upset. I'm very, very confident that at least one of these upsets is going to happen for both of them to happen or for both of them to not happen, I would be incredibly shocked. So if you're an NA fan, you're hoping that Orion beats Lugi and that Bloom Forever loses to Mezcal. But what's likely going to happen is that Bloom Forever is going to beat the Ridley player. He is going to beat Zomba, and then he is going to get in the top 8 after beating Lugi, because I just kind of forgot to say who I might pick for the top 8 is. It's definitely going to be Bloom Forever because his record versus Lugi is amazing. Now, if it is Bloom Forever versus Light, I would favor Light to win that one. And if it's Lugi versus Zomba, I would favor Zomba to win that one. But it's likely going to be Lugi versus Bloom Forever, and Bloom Forever is likely going to come out on top. Now, we aren't going to be taking a look at the losers bracket today just because it is fairly fickle at these super major events. Like 90% of these matchups probably aren't going to happen, especially at an event like Tera where you have a bunch of international talent coming in for the first time and they haven't played against a lot of these players. There's going to be some insane upsets, so we're not even going to bother with the loser side because, again, most of these matchups won't happen. But what I've done instead, I haven't left you completely in the dark, is I've taken all the players that I think are going to top this event or have a chance to top this event, and I've given them their percentages. I have the confidence here with Spargo, Yoshidora, Tweek, and Bloom Forever. These are just the players that I think are going to top it to the winner side of the bracket. We've already gone over all of them. Then you're going to have the somewhat confidence here. You got Light, Zama, Glutini. I can honestly see Gluto being in this confidence here. He's not because I just think Yoshidora is going to beat him, but Glutini has had a very strong grip on Europe as of late, and I'd be pretty surprised if he didn't top 8 this event. Now, for Light Zomba, the reason that they're highlighted red is just because they're probably going to have to play each other at some point in the bracket, and if you play each other, especially in the loser side, which is where I think they're going to play, they're not going to both get top 8. So that's the only reason they're highlighted red. If they don't have to play each other, I would expect both of them in the top 8. Then they're going to have the maybe tier. This is like 50%. Again, these percentages don't really mean anything. It's just how confident I am. Going to have Lugi, Siski, Super Semi, Jogabu, Takara, and Raflo. And the reason that Lugi is going to be highlighted in this blue is just because I think his bracket is incredibly important for him. No disrespect to Lugi by any means, but he's playing Luigi. If he gets a bad bracket, he might just lose. And that's sometimes out of your control when you're playing these worst characters. Now, Lugi, he doesn't need an amazing bracket to get top 8. He doesn't even need a good bracket. He could just have an okay bracket with a handful of -1s, a couple evens in there, maybe even throw in a -2, and he can still top 8 this event. But it's definitely going to matter for him a lot more than it's going to matter for someone like Siski, who's playing Samus, Raflo, who's playing someone like Politano. Like, their brackets aren't going to be as important as Lugi's bracket, so very curious to see how that plays out. Then you're going to have Quick, Amplery, Tarek, Space, and Andres event. Honestly, I could see all these players being moved up to the 50% tier. I just like these other players' brackets a little bit more, and that's the only reason. I just think these players' brackets are a little bit more difficult, but I could definitely see them overcoming it. And our final percent is going to be the, I believe, the Icon percent. And the reason that I have Icon here is because he has been destroying Europe as of late. I'm not going to lie to you. I think Icon's bracket is really, really bad, but he just doesn't really care about matchups in Europe. I mentioned it earlier on in the video. He has been farming, and I could definitely see him getting top 8 this event, but obviously he's got a lot of work in front of him. And we are going to be moving on to the top 8 now, and I should say this now, just because a player wasn't on this list doesn't mean I have zero faith in them to be able to get into the top 8. I just wanted to keep this down to 20 players, and these are the 20 players that I happen to choose. And also, if there's anyone I left out at any point in this video, because we obviously couldn't go over every single player that was attending Tera, please just let me know down below, and I'll be sure to tell you how I think their bracket is. But for our first matchups in the top 8, we're going to have Siski versus Glutini and Jogabu versus Zomba, and I got to go with the seeding on this one. I mean, Glutini consistently beats Siski. It's been a very long time since Siski has been able to beat Gluto, and it's not impossible. He's done it once or twice in the past, but overall, very heavily in Glutini's favor. Then for Zomba Jogabu, I just think that Zomba is going to be able to do better in the matchup. I think Rob does beat Falcon. You can absolutely exploit that character off stage. Now, Falcon has very good combo game versus Rob, so maybe it's not going to be as one-sided as I have in my mind, but Zomba has been on such a tear as of late that I would definitely expect him to pull through here. On the winner side, our first matchup is going to be Spargo versus Yoshidora. Now, these guys have actually played once before at Kagurumi 10, and it did go into Spargo's favor, and I would expect him to win this set as well. Even though Yoshidora's adaptation is very good from set to set, I think the hardest time to beat him is going to be in your first encounter, just because you're probably not going to be used to that unorthodox style of Yoshi. I mean, he's just so much better than the other Yoshi players, so aggressive with it as well. Spargo, he figured it out the first time. I imagine that he will figure it out the second time as well. Then we're going to have Tweek versus Light. Now, I've talked about this a lot throughout different videos, but the last time they played at Battle of BC, it was such a domination from Tweek that I have to pick Tweek here. It's a very back-and-back record overall in 2023. They're always trading sets, but Tweek has won their last 2 encounters, and he won the last one so dominantly that it honestly wouldn't really be fair to pick Light. So I think this is going to be a very close matchup, definitely closer than it was at Battle of BC. Could go either way, but I have to go with Tweek here. In the losers quarters, we have Light versus Gluttony and Yoshidora versus Zamba. Now, for Light Gluttony, definitely have to go with Gluttony there. He's won their only encounters in 2023, as well as winning a majority of their encounters overall. Light has always been very vocal about how much he hates Wario, and the reason for that is probably because Gluttony keeps on beating him in emphatic ways. Also, if Tweek does lose to Light and falls to the loser side of bracket, I would favor Gluttony versus him as well. I mean, their last set isn't on here, but their last set was at Smash Factor X, where Gluttony definitely won that one. So I would say that Gluttony is favored versus both Tweek and Light. Then you're going to have Yoshidora versus Zamba. Now, I'm going to say that Yoshidora takes this one. I already brought this up with Spargo, but very hard to play Yoshidora for your first time playing him. Plus, I actually think Yoshi does fairly well versus Rob. It's not like a crazy unwinnable matchup, but if I had to say it went into one character's favor, I would definitely pick Yoshi there. So I'm going to say Gluttony and Yoshidora move on. And we have our top four here. You have Spargo versus Tweek in the winner's side and Yoshidora Gluttony in the loser's side. For Spargo Tweek, I'm going to be going with Spargo to win this one. And my reasoning for that is how many international wins does Tweek have this year? 0. How many international wins does Spargo have this year? 1. Now, is this a good metric? No. Am I going to change it? Also no, because the matchup between Spargo and Tweek is so insanely unpredictable. I mean, these guys have coin flip matchups. It's kind of like Light Tweek as well. It's just really tough to tell how it's actually going to go. But I'm going to say that Spargo has that edge because he has proven himself internationally this year already. So I'm going to say he does it once again and moves on to the grand finals of the upper side. Then you're going to have Yoshidora versus Gluttony in the loser side. And I'm going to say that Yoshidora does pull through on this one. The reason for that is because Wario combos are already incredibly precise. Now imagine that I have a frame mode option that is invincible, that I could just leave your combo any single time that I want. It becomes incredibly tricky to get your percent on. I know that Yoshidora is going to have no problem racking on his damage, so I'm going to say for their first encounter that Yoshidora does take it over Gluttony. In the losers finals, you got Tweek versus Yoshidora. It's kind of tough to predict how this is going to go. If I had to guess how it starts, it's probably going to be Sephiroth versus Yoshi. If that doesn't work, he can always switch to the Diddy Kong. And because of that, I am going to favor Tweek. The fact that Tweek has 2 options to pick from, he has an even matchup likely in Diddy Kong versus Yoshi, and then probably a slightly winning matchup in Sephiroth versus Yoshi. I would think that he can pull through. Then you're going to have our rematch of Spargo versus Tweek. Maybe Tweek gets a reset, maybe he doesn't. It doesn't really matter because I think that Spargo is going to win Tera, and I also think that Spargo needs to win Tera if he wants to be the #1 player in the world. At this point, Spargo pretty much has to have a flawless season or count on Akala to underperform, and I'm not going to lie, that's probably not going to happen. So, if Spargo wants to be the best player in the world, he's got to win Tera, and I definitely think that he can pull it off, and I thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. The support has been absolutely unreal lately. Again, if there's any part I left out at any point in this video, or something that I just got straight up wrong, please let me know down below. The support has been absolutely unreal. Be sure to sub, all that yada yada, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye!